CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 2, Part 5, Audio by Renee Matthew. The three main players which decided the destiny of the political history of the Roman Empire was the emperor, the aristocracy, and the army, how they controlled and how they dominated. They were the ones who decided how and where to move the dice of the Roman Empire. Now, whenever there was a great commotion between the army members, because we saw that emperors had a very good control over the army, they had a very good connection with the army. So when the armies were divided, when there was no unity among the army members, there was usually a civil war. And the year 69 CE was a very important year. It was known as a notorious year because 4 emperors succeeded the throne quickly. That is, one after the another. They did not give any time for civil war. Suppose a particular emperor dies. After that, there will be some gap before the second emperor succeeds the throne. That is when there will be more possibility for civil wars. But now that did not happen because every emperor mounted the throne in succession. There was no gap for the civil war to come about, to take place. The first 2 centuries were on the whole free from civil war, and in this sense relatively stable. So when there were no civil wars, the empire will be stable, people will be at peace, there won't be any revolts, there won't be any disturbance. But when there was a civil war, it is very dangerous when a particular place has a civil war. The people will be disturbed very badly and the stability of the government will also be lost. But that did not take place here because there was no particular gap for any civil war and the emperor succeeded the throne as if it was planned. Succession to the throne was based as far as possible on family descent. So it was based on the heritage and the lineage, all these kind of family hierarchy which was followed in the royal throne. Okay, suppose it was the father who was the member, the father who was the emperor, the next person will be decided by the Senate. So it was based on the royal descent, the hierarchy, the family, and the lineage. So it can be either natural or adopted. Some people will not have children, some emperors will not have children, so they have all the free will to adopt a person. That is a person, the heir to the throne, the next heir to the throne. So whether it is natural or adoptive, that is not a problem, but the next person will come up based on the family descent. And even the army was strongly wedded to this principle. That is, the army also followed this particular principle of natural descent or adoptive descent, where it is based on the family descent. The hierarchy, the proper hierarchy will have to be kept. So civil war refers to the armed struggles for power within the same country, which was more dangerous actually, leading to upheavals and riots, lot of riots and disturbances. For example, there's an example which is given on this family descent and how it was carried about. For example, Tiberius. Tiberius was the second in the line of Roman emperors. Second emperor, Tiberius. He was not actually the natural son of Augustus. He was an adopted one. And he was a ruler who founded the Principate. But Augustus adopted him to ensure a smooth transition. Augustus found Principate and it was carried over and passed on to Tiberius. So because of all these necessities, he adopted Tiberius and he was the next emperor. And in those days, external warfare, that is with the other places, was also very less common. Why do you think that happened in the first 2 centuries? Because nobody even dared to point their finger or raise their finger against the power of these 2 empires. That was the strength of these 2 empires. So in the first 2 centuries, there was no uprising. No external warfare was there. The empire which was inherited by Tiberius from Augustus was already so vast. So it's like the father has extended the empire and made it ready for the son, the adopted son. And there was no necessity for further expansion because already the Roman Empire was huge and there was no necessity for further expansion. Okay? So there are 2 facts which is given there. The Augustan age is remembered for the peace it assured, the peaceful rule, the productive rule. When a ruling family or when the rule is peaceful, it is very productive. So there were a lot of decades of internal strife and centuries of military conquest after Augustus Caesar, after the Augustan age. Romans saw and experienced internal strife and military conquest after that. So because of that, they remember the Augustan age as an age of peace and productivity. The only major campaign of expansion in the early empire was Trajan's fruitless occupation of territory across the Euphrates. That was the only place where they suffered a bit. That is when Trajan tried to occupy the territory across the Euphrates. He wanted to extend across the Euphrates in the year 113 to 17, and that was abandoned by his successors. So maybe next emperor, Trajan, after Tiberius. But Tiberius did not want to expand the empire because it was already very vast. So now Trajan wanted to actually expand, but it was not promoted by the successors. So this is Emperor Augustus, who founded Principate, and then you have got the body, how they kind of had a discussion with the king, the royal kind of body which always communicated with the king. Look at the golden age of the Roman Empire, that is the Augustan age. Augustan age is mostly known as the golden age because of political stability and power, as well as the flourishing of the arts. Arts, literature, everything flourished at this particular time. It was an important moment in the making of England also. England was also hugely influenced by Augustan age. Cultural innovation took place, public debates, because that was a time when cultural aspects, everything flourished. Rejection of extremism, no extreme measures taken at all. Everything was moderate. The virtues were encouraged, like politeness, moderation, rationality. All these things were praised. Politeness, moderation, rationality, to think logically. And man has always got a sense of what is wrong and what is right. And virtue lies in good breeding. So if you're not bred well, if you're not nurtured well by your family, you will show all the qualities later. So the greatest gift that you can give to a child is the decisive power to decide or differentiate between the virtues of right and wrong, the ability to make decision between what is right and wrong. The third Earl of Shaftesbury was a philosopher of politeness. So some extra points are given here on the Augustan age, on why it was known as the Golden Age. Some more characteristics of the Roman Empire. So after the gradual extension of the Roman direct rule, it was accomplished by absorbing a whole series of dependent kingdoms into Roman provincial territory. Because the Roman Empire had so many places in and around, and there were so many territories that were dependent on the Roman Empire, maybe because of fear. They just wanted to show that yes, we are depending on you, we cannot sustain on our own, we cannot be independent, certain things like that. So, the Near East was full of such kingdoms that were completely dependent on the Roman Empire, and they did not want to be independent. But by the early 2nd century, which were laying to the west of the Euphrates, that is towards the Roman territory, had disappeared, swallowed up by Rome. So you have got the western part of the Roman Empire and the eastern part of the Roman Empire. Did you understand? So Romans were a great group. They were highly powerful. We saw the army, the political government which ruled them. So some territories to the eastern part of the Roman Empire told them that we are depending on you. Okay, the eastern part. It was a mutual kind of rapport that they shared. It's not that they were under the Roman rule, but they depended on the Romans. But the western part of the Euphrates, they were so weak that the Romans swallowed them up. And everything came under the Romans. So coming under the Romans is different from being dependent on them. So west was swallowed by the Romans because they were weak. The eastern part was not so weak, but they depended on the Romans. So that is why one part actually fell. The western part of the Roman Empire actually fell because of this particular reason. Did you understand? So the early 2nd century, those which lay west of the Euphrates towards Roman territory had disappeared. It just went away because it was swallowed by the Rome. But the East was full of such kingdoms which was dependent on the Romans. So, incidentally, some of these kingdoms were exceedingly wealthy. Some of the kingdoms which were really wealthy than the Romans were the Herod's kingdom, which yielded the equivalent of 5.4 million denarii per year. So huge. And look at the gold that they had. Okay, and also about the 4.5 gram of pure silver. All the possessions. So all these kingdoms were really very powerful than the Romans, and some of them were dependent, but some were actually, those who were not dependent were swallowed up by Rome. Now, in fact, except for Italy, which was not considered a province in these centuries, all the territories of the empire were organized into provinces and subject to taxation. So, except Italy, Italy was not considered as a province in these centuries. All the others were declared as a province and it was subject to taxation. So, that is one particular reason for why the armies started revolting against the government. At its peak in the 2nd century, the Roman Empire stretched from the Scotland to the borders of Armenia and from the Sahara to the Euphrates and sometimes beyond. So it started expanding. That is the meaning of it. So 2nd century, this is the expansion. Very important point. So there was no government in the modern sense to help them run things. And I told you that all this huge empire was divided into territories. So how was it possible to control this huge empire? How was it possible for the emperor to cope with the control and administration of such a vast? And it was not only vast but also diverse. It was diverse and vast with a population of some 60 million in the mid-2nd century. 60 million people, diversity and expanse. It is not very easy to control and administer them. The answer lies in the urbanization of the empire. It is because of the urbanization, not just the body which controlled them. Look at the urbanization, how it is thickly populated. And that was the greatest control, how they controlled. And the stretching is very important. It went beyond the borders of Armenia to Scotland, and then towards the south when you come, again it expanded. So that is the expansion which took place. All these things are happening in the 2nd century. I've given a picture of the urbanized Roman Empire. Okay, very neat. They were very good for organizing and also arranging. That was the greatest advantage. Look at the Roman Empire, how it actually expanded. This particular red colored part. It expanded. All these places came under them. In 117 AD as its greatest extent. All these places were taken over. Africa was there. Everything was under them. The red colored part. The great empire of Rome. This map is very important for your reference. Urbanization was the greatest factor which made the emperor easy to administer this huge empire. What was it? The great urban centers that lined the shores of the Mediterranean. I will look at the map and I will show you. So the particular Mediterranean Ocean, it was surrounded by all these places. Okay, all these urban centers were outlining it. Carthage, Alexandria, Antioch were the biggest among them. And they were the true bedrock of the imperial system. Carthage, Alexandria and Antioch. The true bedrock means they were the exponents of the imperial system, and they were very strong and urban centers also. So when a particular place is an urban center, you can say that they give access to upper class societies and also trade. It was through the cities that government was able to tax the provincial country, which generated much of the wealth of the empire. So it was a very wealthy places, Carthage, Alexandria and Antioch. And it is through these places that the government was able to extract taxes. What is meant by this? The local upper classes were really wealthy and they collaborated with the Roman state in administering their own territories and raising taxes from them. So, what is the meaning of this particular thing? It meant that, listen carefully, these three places, Carthage, Alexandria, Antioch, these three places were the bedrock of the imperial system. Means these three places were very powerful and they were supported by the Roman state to collect taxes from the local territory. So they became very powerful in their own territory. So that was by the support of the Roman state and the Senate. They said, okay, you collect the taxes and give a share to us and you can control your own territory. So they controlled their own territory. That is what happened earlier also. We saw in this particular slide that we have got the west and the east. Okay, they had, the Roman state had given the freedom to these people, that is to the eastern part of the empire, to take care of them. Even to the western part. Eastern part was more powerful, but the western part was less powerful. That is why they swallowed up. Everything came under them. So they will give a chance to these territories to rule on their own. So that was done, and a share of the tax was also given to the Roman Empire. So that was the work of the local upper classes, and they were really supported by the Roman state.